Hi, and welcome back to your Autism Game Plan. I'm Joya Vanderlaan, a family nurse practitioner, a functional medicine specialist, and an autism mom myself. Today we're going to talk about SIBO, SIFO. I've been getting quite a few questions online in different areas, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, about SIBO, SIFO, how to test for that. Now, I've done a video on SIBO and SIFO before, talked a little bit about testing, but we're going to go a little deeper into testing options and if testing is even the first step you should take. So I first want to talk a little bit about symptoms that might make you think you need to test for SIBO or SIFO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or small intestinal fungal overgrowth. So what might lead you to even think that your child would need a test for this? Well, when I hear the symptom of severe bloating, that immediately piques my thought to consider SIBO, SIFO, overgrowth of some kind. If it's upper abdominal bloating, probably more small intestinal. If it's lower abdominal bloating, specifically only lower abdominal, it probably has to do with the large intestine more than the small intestine. But the small intestinal bacterial or fungal overgrowth certainly can cause swelling or bloating of the whole abdominal area too. So upper or whole abdomen bloating really is kind of a trigger for me to think, could it be SIBO or SIFO? Other common symptoms can be constipation or diarrhea, and sometimes belching or indigestion. So those are some symptoms that are pretty easy to tell, even in a nonverbal child. Well, their stomach's bloated, that's pretty clear. If they are having these symptoms and you think, oh, I read about SIBO or SIFO, I wonder if that's happening to my child. They do have a couple of these classic symptoms or signs of SIBO or SIFO. Maybe I do want to get a test. Typically, a breath test is what's recommended. Genova Diagnostics has that, and you can even order that online yourself through mymedlabs.com. It's the Genova test just through that company. It's a couple $100, and it can be really hard to get a child to take the liquid carbohydrate that can feed those bacteria, which then give off a certain metabolite which is tested for in the breath. But it can be really hard to get the child to cooperate with drinking that carbohydrate sugar substance, and it can be hard then to get them to blow into the sample bag. The instructions, easier for adults to follow, harder for kids to follow, even harder for kids with autism to follow. Sometimes we get it. Honestly, I don't often order the breath test. Tests that I often order for other things, including SIBO and SIFO, would be things like a stool test. So GI map is the one that I use most commonly, and the OAT test or organic acid test is a urine test. I order that frequently too. Both of those can show tendencies towards SIBO, SIFO, but aren't 100% diagnostic of, yes, this is SIBO, and what kind of SIBO is it? Is it methane? Is it hydrogen? Is it something else? So not as definitive, but certainly can give clues in the right direction. In terms of testing for SIBO, as I mentioned, I very rarely do the breath test anymore. I have found the stool tests or OAT tests to be much more helpful. Sometimes I don't even test. Sometimes if the symptoms are very clear or very suspicious for SIBO, I know that a lot of the patients I see, a lot of people in the world, have very imbalanced GI systems. And so one approach that I will sometimes take, especially if it might be difficult to collect a sample, is start somebody on kind of a general gut healing, gut balancing protocol. And one of my favorite ones to use is by Microbiome Labs. They make products like Mega Spore probiotic, Mega Prebiotic, Mega Mucosa, which is a formulation that can really heal the intestinal lining, healing leaky gut. There's also a product they have called Mega IgG with all sorts of really good immune globulins to kind of, I like to think of it as mopping up the bad bacteria, bad viruses, bad fungi, kind of mopping those up and getting them out of there. And so really it doesn't necessarily have to be one specific thing that it treats. It can help treat and balance the GI system almost no matter what's going on. And so that often has been a really, really good place to start, rather than starting with really expensive antibiotics for SIBO that often work, but the SIBO will definitely come back if you haven't addressed the underlying root cause, or really hard diets to follow, like a low FODMAP diet can be very, very hard to follow, very restrictive for our kids who already restrict their diets themselves most of the time. Two kind of root causes that I always want to look for and address with suspected SIBO are H. pylori infection in the stomach and a lack of motility of the intestines. Those are two reasons why SIBO can happen in the first place, and if we don't treat those, then it's just going to come back no matter what we do. So I'm going to actually create a protocol in full script. I have that list of autism essentials for you guys. It's pretty long by now because I'm including every supplement that I talk about in any of my videos. I'm including it in there so it's easy to find. What I'm going to do is create a separate SIBO protocol, and I'll link that below. And I will have in there the supplements that I use most commonly when I encounter SIBO in a patient. And it usually results in a clearing up of the SIBO and it doesn't come back. And that's huge because with most treatments, whether it's an antibiotic or a diet or whatever it is, the SIBO so often comes back. So have a look at that. If you suspect your child has SIBO, you may want to do a little bit more reading and consider a SIBO protocol to help them. Thanks for watching, and remember, be gentle with yourself. You're doing a great job.